Hi.
Hi, Lee. Oh,
Hello, this is Jim Conley.
hi, Jim.
Hello. Everybody's talking yet.
We'll just wait like 5 more minutes before we start the meeting, for more people to join in.
Okay, a lot of familiar people I haven't seen in a while.
How's everybody?
Hello, Eddie. Hi, Meg.
Painted Buckeye.
The big spoon.
Oh, Painted Buckeye is supposed to be a shrub, and this was a tree from 1955 at the Arboretum. It went down in the
Wow.
windstorm last year.
I'm sitting here in Portugal, but it's 9 o'clock at night, so I'm done with my codfish and thought I would show my face before I turn my face off.
Yeah, so you don't have the 40-mile-an-hour wind there, and I don't know what the wind chill temperature is, but it's pretty low.
We flew through Minneapolis, and I think it was 5 degrees. All the hockey rinks were neatly plowed as you looked down below from the airplane.
We actually have hockey rinks this year.
Yeah, it's a good thing. All that free hockey out there on the ponds.
I think last year we only had about 3 days.
So it's 2 minutes after. How many more minutes do you want to wait?
I had said at 3 that we'd wait until 5 after just for extra people to join, but if you think we're good.
No, we can wait till 5 after. Sounds good.
And then I put the agenda in the chat as well, just in case anyone wanted to reference it.
Oh, that's a good idea. All right, Julie, we're good to go.
All right, perfect. So the first item on the agenda is
Mm.
the discussion about the symposium. So do you want me to just talk about what we're planning?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can add to it too. And
Yeah. So yeah, I mentioned it in the blog, but we're planning on having about 10 people present for about 30 minutes. We'll have the symposium in, did we say June or May? I think we said May. Sorry.
it's okay, doesn't matter. Keep going.
Yeah. And then we are going
Mm.
to have it published online through the professional development website so that people can take it and get like certified or get like something saying that they took the course. So we'll start by like having everyone submit like an abstract or a summary of what they want to present about, and then I can be in contact and help you guys like film the videos. And then you'll be able to like cite it and stuff once that's all published. Oh, and then we're gonna have a workshop attached to it. That's part of saying that you like took the course. There'll be some like quizzes after each presentation.
So what Julie's talking about is what we're trying to do is get some presence on the web with all of you who do research to summarize what you do. And then put it on this. University now has a professional development website where you can post like a short course and it can have the videos, and then people can take it to get a certificate that they listen to Jumping Worm Management, and they can use it for their business. So it's a way to encourage people to come and take this. We'd probably, offer it for $10 or something very minimal. And so what Julie would do is we would talk to you about what you'd like to talk about. And then she would be the moderator and you'd talk on Zoom and she would record it. And then we can put that in YouTube. And then she would make up a quiz. She'd listen to your talk, half hour, 40 minutes, whatever you want. And she'd make up a quiz, send it to you to review. And that would be part of getting the credit on the professional development site. And hopefully that will allow people, probably if we get it done in the spring, maybe people won't use it till after the summer, but when people are done with their field season and are still have jobs, whether for state agency or federal agency, it's off season a little bit, they can take this for credit and we can spread Jumping Worm information around. So that's our thought. We're willing to sponsor it. So we'll send you an email asking if you want to participate with details, and then she will start interviewing you to make these recordings. And we're trying to make it so you have very little to do. Basically, you put your slideshows together, you talk about your slides on Zoom, and that we do all the infrastructure. And then you can get credit too for, this online course. So that's our thoughts. Does everybody think this will work? I do this stuff all the time and it works very nicely. So I'm confident that this will be a very nice job and we will get a lot of people who want to listen to this. So we can talk personally if you have reservations, but I don't have any reservations. I think it will be really good. And I know that the people up in Vermont, that they had a previous meeting in person, and I'm gonna let Erin summarize it because I didn't hear it from Joseph Gores myself. I heard it through Erin. So Erin, were you at the first meeting? How long ago was it?
I wasn't there physically. They held a meeting.
Erin, you're not loud enough.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Just a sec.
I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Good, good. All right. I wasn't there physically. No. Joseph had and others had invited other jumping room researchers out to Vermont. I don't know if I think it was like 2 years ago in March or April. Brandon Miller, as far as I know, was the only Minnesota person who attended in person. I was given the Microsoft Teams meeting link, and so I attended one or 2 hours worth of meetings where they were just kind of talking about elevator pitches to get more jumping room funding research, and then just our interests in you know management or other types of research aspects. So that was kind of it. I know that Joseph has just sent out another email saying that he would like to convene again some weekend in either the spring or early summer in Vermont, and that more details would come. Hopefully they'll have. I don't plan on attending in person either for this one, but hopefully they'll have another online virtual option.
So we don't want to compete with what he's doing. We just want to quantify what he's doing. So we just want to keep it in a way that other people can hear what you have to say, and then have a plan to get people to listen to it. So we will work with him to make sure that we're not competitors but collaborators on this. So
Yeah.
we'll talk to you more about this. If you think it's a really bad idea, send me an email. I'm interested.
Well, I just based on what I've heard from them, like they're building out their website to try and find a centralized way to fund research. That's my understanding. And so they have a volunteer named Shannon Fisher, who most of us have spoken with, or some of us have spoken with, just to get on the website. They still haven't launched the website, and I don't even know if they still really figured out how they were going to run any sort of donations that they get from the website, because when you're working with university foundations, especially public universities, that gets really, really messy and complicated. I know that the website is supposed to be public facing though. And so I don't think that there's any real issues with competition, since your symposium is just going to be, like you said, a professional development educational opportunity, which, just based on the very limited responses we got from American Public Gardens Association, is something that at least the public garden employees desperately want. They just want to learn more about jumping worms from the people who have the most experience with them, and figure out steps that they are able to take right now.
Okay, so thanks, Erin. That's great. So I'm just curious, have all of you been interviewed by Joseph and Shannon for the website?
Yes.
Yeah. Lee, did you get interviewed? Did you look?
I'm not sure. I've talked with Joseph on several different occasions, and I don't remember if one of those was an interview or not, but.
Okay. Well, they want you to send them a Vita and a bunch of stuff. So how much grant money you've gotten and a blurb about yourself. So I'm sure they want to get this from you.
Okay.
I'll send you the name. Shannon Fisher is the one gathering the information. All right, so we're done with number one. we'll start with the update just because we finally got some really nice graphs. Julie has been rearing worms for 16 weeks. So we've said from the beginning, we can't do bioassays or anything till we figure out how to keep the controls alive. So I think we did it. So congratulations to Julie. So she has some graphs. She's doing a second replicate now, but maybe the best thing, Julie, is to summarize. So she's been using 3 species of worms because we're all having trouble doing bioassay with jumping worms and keeping them alive. So we decided let's get red wigglers and European earthworms because you can buy them from people and see how to keep them alive. And then we'll try jumping worms too, which we did. She'll tell you about her success with that. And then my part of the grant is I want to bioassay some of these natural plant products that are made into pesticide labels by the EPA and see if they work. And that's to try to work with Jim as a regulatory person with MNLA to try to get some labels out there to manage jumping worms, which we don't have right now. So that's why we're so interested in trying to figure out how to keep a colony going. So I have a postdoc coming from India. She's actually a visiting professor. She's going to work on this. I have a chemist at South Dakota who has been listening to Jim Connolly and is trying to figure out how the tea seed meal that's in the rough versus the pelletized tea seed meal versus the liquid versus the powder. Jim says the only one that really works is the raw product. And so it may be that there is a chemical in there that's highly water soluble, and that's why it works so well when you use it, because you water it in and it goes with the water like a compost tea. And when you make another product out of it, you lose that water fraction. So that all makes sense to the chemist. So he's going to try to figure out what's in this compost tea that has an active ingredient. He may never get it to the actual saponin name, because that's another story. And I'll talk more about this when we start to make progress. But that's our intent. So in order to do this, we have to bioassay worms. We've talked to the people at the IR4 and the EPA. They say go for worms in general, just not jumping worms, because people want to manage worms on golf courses, and it's maybe some other kind of situation where you have a lot of traffic and there's a lot of worms on the ground. So anyway, that's why we're doing this, but we will bioassay with jumping worms to make sure that they work. So Julie, can you put your graphs up on the share? And
Yes.
we'll just summarize it really quickly. This is like a 30-second soundbite here.
Go. Okay. So this is our first graph. So I had 3 replicates of each treatment. And these are the means of those 3 replicates. The first graph on the left side, these darker colors are the adults. And then these lighter colors on the right side are the juveniles that we are finding in the treatments. So all the adults died, but there were a lot of juveniles in the treatments they could be contamination from the mushroom compost that I use in the treatments, but we're hoping that, sorry, let me stop moving that. We're hoping that some of them at least are juvenile jumping worms that have started to hatch. There are definitely jumping worm cocoons in the treatments that I have seen, so it's not unlikely that it could be jumping worms. The treatment 7, which is the purple one, has worm food from Memes Worms. It's an online retailer. And then the orange line is treatment 5, and that had romaine lettuce added as food. And then this is for the red wigglers. So again, we see treatment 7 has the highest number of juveniles popping up, and then followed by treatment 5 and treatment 4. The replicates and treatments were all the same. And then this is for the night crawlers. The only difference is that we didn't have the final 3 treatments, but treatment 4 and treatment 2 were showing up to be the best. And we also had juveniles in those treatments. So they were doing good in there.
So Julie's repeating this now with so this last graph, we didn't have enough worms to do all the treatments, so he just did a subset. So now she's repeating this so this is like our pilot study. Now she's repeating it a second time with all 7 treatments for all the worms. And as long as we can get them to survive and and reproduce. So it is clear that the jumping worms are annual, like everybody keeps saying, that they all died around beginning of November, they're all dead. And that's when these smaller worms. So we ask anybody who knows how to identify juvenile worms. We are going to ask that today if somebody can help us figure out a way to identify juvenile jumping worms. But anyway, I think we've used bean sprouts and lettuce because of what Lee said, that they'd like to eat something green. But this worm food seems to be doing okay with jumping worms, so it's probably the easiest and the cheapest way to keep them alive. So that's where we are. Erin, do you know how to identify juvenile jumping worms?
Fortunately not. My only way is to hold them in my hand, and if they thrash around more than others, then they probably are.
So these guys thrash around, Julie, right?
Yeah, well, not as much as I think that they should be, but they do.
All right, so I have my last postdocs now, a professor at the University of Alabama. She just bought a $40,000 qPCR machine. She's going to use Joseph Guraz's collaborator, Miriam. She's going to use her technique, and we're going to send her some juveniles. So we are going to use qPCR to figure out if these are jumping worm juveniles. So stay tuned. We're probably not going to do it scientifically enough to do a paper right away, but we want to just figure out if we are keeping jumping worms alive. So but everybody seems to have the same problem. Even Joseph said the same thing, that when you collect them and put them together and you go home happy, by the time you unwrap them, they're all dead. So something weird is going on when you put them in a container and transport them. We don't know if it's the heat. We don't think it is. We think there's some chemical that they produce, but that seems to be a pretty consistent issue. Julie, in the lab, you went out maybe 5 times, right? And each time you go out with one, and you found there are plenty of jumping worms, adults. This is back in September and October. And they would put them in a container and they looked fine in the field, and the next day they were all dead.
Vera, before we move too far away from identifying juveniles, I just wanted to ask Kyungsoo and Lee if they feel more comfortable identifying juveniles. Lee's really good at European, so I'll send him a photo and he's able to help me with that. Do either of you feel comfortable with any sort of distinguishing characteristics of juveniles?
No. Lee, do you?
Well, it's the behavior and yeah, I mean, their body shape is a little different, but body shapes are they change up from second to second, so you can't always rely on that. You know, because the jumping worms have longer points on their noses, has a longer point to it. But their body is an accordion, so you can't be sure whether they're stretched out or not. So my guess is if people really studied the anatomy on the surface of the skin under a microscope, you could probably find something, but it would always require putting them under a microscope.
Can I ask a question about that? This is Meg from Three Rivers Park District. Yeah, I was wondering, is there what age the setae developed to where they could be observable, like under a dissecting scope? We had to use a scope this last summer for a lot of our ID. It's very challenging.
Yeah.
It's good for me to hear that it wasn't just me.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Maybe as long as you have these lab specimens, maybe you can throw one under a dissecting scope at different ages and see, because the setae are very diagnostic.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is we have somebody in the department who's retired named John Lumen, and he's a hymenopterist. He describes species, and he loves little projects. I'm going to take Julie, and we're going to go ask him to, come down, take jumping worms, and make drawings and we'll try to figure this out. So CD are where we want to start. Okay. We'll
Yeah,
probably,
that's definitely at what age
Mm.
do they get the CD?
Mm.
Because each segment on a jumping worm has numerous CD and they're all very short and they're all the way around the worm. So they basically look like a stack of gears.
Mhm.
all right, Lee, that's great.
And
Yeah.
and I, you know, it might be good idea to construct a really good kind of three-dimensional models of different earthworm species along their life cycle. So anthropology department has this camera called gigapixel. So you basically get really fine resolution photography in many layers, and then computer kind of stitch those images together and then construct a three-dimensional view of insect or small artifacts. So that way, if this requires some painstaking labor because you don't want to have organisms dehydrating under this strong light. So you have to kind of keep the moisture on. But then if we can kind of pull out the, one good image of jumping worms in their different life stage, and this could be we can use this and over again to kind of show people. And then we will also have a really good view of their, skins and whether their setae develop in 1 month. I think that can have a really good use.
I think that's a really good idea. And I
Mm,
thought of John Lumen because, he does
mm,
this very detailed kind of studies.
mm,
So we'll
mm.
talk to you when we'll see after we talk to him and maybe you can guide us with some ideas. We'll keep them moist. I think we can keep them alive enough to take digital pictures and then do
Yeah,
reference.
yeah.
Yeah, and John's tree in Loring Park is doing really well. I don't know if
Mm.
he still lives in the neighborhood.
No, he moved to Stillwater.
Oh, because there's a Lumen memorial tree that was planted when his father died. It's a Kentucky coffee tree, and it's actually getting pretty big now. It must be 30 or 35 feet high. So tell him that the tree's doing really well.
Does it have jumping worms under it, Lee?
No, no, it's in a lawn area. Jumping worms don't seem to like lawns at all.
So we did find that paper. Julie, did you put it in the reference about those jumping worms? We think it's a different species that are down south on the lawn. We did look for that.
Yeah, those are Minthus gracilis, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, yeah, Gracilis does live in lawns, and my guess is it has a higher temperature tolerance for the adults
Mhm.
than the other species, and that's why it can live in lawns because the student that I have been advising in Ohio has tons of them in lawns, and they're all Gracilis in the lawns.
Can she
No.
tell juveniles apart?
Hmm?
Can she tell juveniles apart?
I don't know.
I had a question about gracilis. Do we know what the cold tolerance of those are? Because the ones in Minnesota, we know there's nowhere in Minnesota too cold for them.
Right. Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, if you look at the reports on Gracilis, none of them are very far north. Like Ohio is the furthest north, but you don't know whether that means they can't go further north because it's too cold or they just weren't brought there yet. Yeah, too bad they aren't out here in the soil this winter as a test. After all the below zero weather we've had with no snow on the ground, we've got the coldest, probably the coldest soil temperatures you can ever get.
I think so. Yeah.
So I just have this is like a non sequitur, but we've been trying in these rearing studies to measure moisture. So I got some expensive data logger moisture probes and they don't work in soil. They do percent humidity, but they don't work. We thought if you just lay them on the soil, but they don't seem to be able to pick up the moisture in the soil.
Are they the ones with the little probes?
Mm.
Like 2-inch long probes that coming out of a white box? What kind are they?
They look like a very thick marker. They look
Oh.
like a big marker like this. They're called data loggers. They're $100 each.
Oh, there they are. I'm not familiar with those.
But they didn't work. And so we bought some cheap plant stakes that you put in your plant to tell you when you should water it. So they have like 3 values. And that seems to work. That they can tell when it's very dry, very wet. And so they can't, yeah, show them, Julie, what we've been using. We're not happy with it, but that's kind of works.
Yeah.
And somebody last time we spoke talked about those coins you use outside that you put, and they're like $125 each. So if anybody knows of a cheaper soil moisture data logger, please email us.
Boy, yeah, I mean, they either log the data and don't measure very well, or they measure really well and don't log the data, or if they do both, they cost thousands of dollars.
Well, we were willing that, well, the first one, Julie, we've used for our bumblebee research, and they're really good. And we put them in our refrigerators and freezers, and if you put 2 in, they measure exact. So you pay $125 each, but they're really good. But for some reason, they sit on the surface, and we thought the soil moisture would get in the air, the space in the plastic bin, but it's not. So even though you can see there's moisture in the soil, the data loggers aren't working.
Yeah, there are a couple of sensors that I'm kind of looking into to buy myself. So, Bella, I will share their kind of website, so you
Okay,
can
good.
take a look. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so what should we do next? Nobody from Hindustry is here. Jim is off in Europe somewhere. Jim has joined our group, Jim Connolly. He's with Planet Turf.
Hey, Vera, I'm actually here.
Oh, you are? Oh, good.
I am in Europe. I'm in Portugal,
Portugal, great.
looking for jumping worms.
Did you find any?
Well, I'll check tomorrow. I just got here. I'm still jet
Okay.
lagged.
So Jim was giving us information. He talked to EPA a while back on trying to register the product he sells at Planet Turf called Castaway, which now the Andersons use his name, but it's a different product. That one's pelletized. His was just the raw natural product. And Jim has kind of talked to us about this, and he says he thinks the raw product, he knows that works better than the processed product, which is a liquid and a like concentrated powder. And he said,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
They apparently they're buying it. You can buy it in bulk, and it comes in an extruded pellet. Looks like rabbit food. It's essentially water processed. There's no chemicals, and they extrude it under high pressure. But I believe no, not high temperature. So the molecule, that's what I believe the saponin molecule then is, whichever saponin it is, because I know there's a wide variety of plant-derived saponins in alfalfa and lots of plants. So they take it and they grind it, and then they add a binding agent to it to create a new granule, which is very, very small. And their technology is called dispersible granule. So they pulverize it into maybe micron size and then reconstitute it in a pellet. We're simply taking the the extruded pellet and asking the Chinese to crush it into something that's about the size of a large BB that you put in a BB gun. And like I said earlier, in previous meetings, I've tried the high purity powder, which if you're a beer maker and you buy a malt extract, it's just like that. It's very sticky. It's very foamy. I've tried to use it in a sprayer, but it's so foamy, it's very difficult to use. And I don't have the any scientific data, but the efficacy of the powder appears to be difficult to work with the granule. When I put the granule out at 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet, I know that within 5 minutes, every single worm in the ground is on the surface after about a half an inch of water. So I've tried the same thing with the powder. I've tried to determine the active ingredient because I know the granular is a minimum of 15% active. So in the powder might be 40 or 50%. And they use that powder for pharmaceuticals as well. And then the liquid I've also tried, and I don't think it's as effective. So those are the two products out there. Interestingly, I'll just bring you up to date on what I'm doing as a company, trying to make money and not saying that I'm killing anything. That the internet traffic, pretty much, if you Google tea seed meal, the gardeners are saying, yeah, I used it and it worked like magic. And I think I said previously that I've had marriage proposals from homeowners calling me that they're so happy that the product works. So it's pretty simple. I am registering it now in every state north of the Mason-Dixon as a soil amendment. I don't know if you're interested, but as a company, I've been selling it literally as a bag of nothing. I make no claims. I don't tell anybody anything about it. And they just order it from my distributors I have throughout the US. And I've instructed them not to make any claims. It's simply a bag of pea seed meal. But now that I've registered it as a soil amendment, I can use verbiage such as apply at this rate, contains 15% saponin. And then I've provided these states with research data on the benefits of saponin. The research is limited, but saponins do have some enzymatic effects on soils, increasing enzyme activity, microbial population. So there are some soil benefits as a soil amendment. And in addition, the product is 85% organic matter. So we know that the carbon in organic matter is beneficial to soil. So I can claim the benefit of this almost like a mulch or a peat moss. So that's the way I'm going to try to get more product out there. I find it interesting that Anderson's has gone back and forth with the claim that it reduces the frequency of earthworm castings. I don't know what to think about that. It certainly does stop earthworm castings on night crawlers on golf courses. The jumping worm casting isn't a big deal. But so that's kind of the avenue I'm going at. As a fertilizer, it's a 1-0-1, which basically isn't even a fertilizer. You'd have to put out an awful lot of product to get a nitrogen potassium benefit from it. So that's what I'm up to on my end. I've got it registered in Minnesota, the New England states. Every state is so different. It's really kind of interesting. Iowa has been impossible, so I've given up on Iowa. But I just registered in Ohio as a soil amendment, New York, New Jersey, just to help my the people selling it, at least to say that they're selling a beneficial product for the soil. I wish I could say, and that's your job, right? To get the EPA to determine that worms and earthworms are actually considered a pest. And I shared with you, Vera, that one of the standard tests for every EPA pesticide is earthworm toxicology report. So TC meal would fail miserably. And therefore, unless some type of EPA decision is made, the TC meal wouldn't even get past that test protocol. And I shared that with you. But I know you're trying to possibly isolate the saponin molecule and maybe be able to produce a synthetic form of it. Am I thinking right there?
That's the point, yeah.
But it's really easy to go out right now and say, hey, 6 to 12 pounds per 1,000 square feet, you will kill every single worm that the solution moving through the soil comes in contact with. And I don't know if that's the right terminology because it drives them to the surface. And the unknown part is, I guess I'm happy to send you all the TC meal you want, but it would be interesting to know if the reason for their mortality, for their death, is dehydration and the inability to regenerate their mucus, or is the product itself actually toxic? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody knows. That's the million-dollar question. Because wouldn't it be interesting if it just drove them to the surface and they simply dehydrated because of their mucus regeneration is compromised? I don't know the answer to that question.
From what I observed when we first tried it, Jim, was that yes, they surface right away after we apply it and irrigate the area, and their skin turns a very deep pink, like it's injured, and they, like, within 20 minutes they stopped moving.
Okay. So there's some type of dermal toxicity, I guess.
That's what
Yeah.
it looked like to me, yeah.
You know, you can find, I read one report, I don't remember the university, about control methods to apply a product that causes them to leave their burrows. And then you can collect the bad ones and leave the good ones alone, I guess. But you can do that with mustard. I think they listed several things on there. I don't know if tea seed was on there, but wasabi mustard. There's wasabi mustard manufacturers in Central Washington, and they were selling that product as a nematicide. And you probably know this, that they rotate crops with mustard. They rotate potatoes with mustard, plow the mustard in, reduce the nematode populations, and then grow potatoes the next year. So the mustard, very, very, very expensive. I mean, I can't imagine anybody being able to afford mustard compared to tea seed meal. So I guess that's my update from the commercial world. We continue to bring it in from China. We currently pay a 25% tariff. I suppose we're going to be paying another 10%, bringing it up to 35%. I wish I could get it from India. I just can't find anywhere else that grows this tree that has this big, I think the word tea is kind of misleads you a little bit. It's not, I guess it's a camellia. I don't know anything about that, but in any event.
Well, they say
Yeah.
they use it for oil. So camellia here is an ornamental. So this Camellia sinensis, supposedly they take the seeds and press it for an oil, and they use it in cooking in more rural areas. This is just what I've read. And then they take the whole plant, whatever's left, and grind that up and compost it, and that's what's in your bag.
Yeah, I think
The ovary and the flower and whatever leaves, whatever they can, they grind up and compost it.
Yeah, I've seen the seed. It's quite large. It's like a walnut. So
Oh.
I'm sure that after they crush it and press it, there's a lot of organic residue. And I've run a full analysis on the organic matter, the percent carbon, the mineral elements that are in there, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, etc. And I don't think the product I'm getting has leaves and stems in it. And maybe that's why it works so good, but I don't know.
Do you think it's just the ground up ovary and seed castings
I believe.
after they press it? Okay.
Yeah. Because I have a pictorial process.
Oh, okay.
The people that sell it to me, they kind of sent me a bunch of pictures and how they make it and how they harvest it. And
Okay.
so it's kind of interesting. I'll send that to you.
Okay.
But so that's my view from the commercial world.
And the reason why you have not tried to register it as an insecticide is the prohibitive cost?
No, I think the cost wouldn't be that prohibitive because there's a lot of small business discounts. There's a lot of organic discounts. There's a lot of fast track methods. I just would love to have an EPA person. I don't know what to put on the label. If I can't put, toxic to earthworms on the label, I don't know. I don't know how I would get it registered. So that's my dilemma on thinking this through and spending money on it and having someone say, "What? Wait a minute, what's it do to earthworms?" I said, "Well, that's the point." So I think you're in the best position to get the ear of the EPA and change the thinking of earthworms. I think at the least, they would limit it to just gardens, only when you have jumping worms, that you couldn't broadcast it on large areas and eliminate every earthworm out there. However, even the courses that I've had put it out wall to wall and have absolute carnage on night crawlers, they're back the next year. Not in the same populations, but you don't get all of them. But the jumping worm is different because of its life cycle, I think. Yeah, because it only lives a year, as you know.
You
I don't know
know,
what.
just another potential application that I think is really important that maybe the EPA would be a little more amenable to is just decontamination and biosecurity applications in commercial settings. Just imagining like somebody gets a big shipment of plants from out of state, jumping worms are found. At some point, maybe this product could be used to decontaminate that shipment so it wasn't wasted. And then I think like another angle is that they are a prohibited invasive species now in Minnesota, but we don't really have a process at this point for businesses to comply if they are found. So I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but I think that there's more applications than just gardens and, in the spectrum of a backyard vegetable garden to a national forest. There's so much in between too.
Yeah.
In
That-
the chat, I threw a link up from Illinois Extension, which touts for gardeners that earthworms are good, which is what I was always told during my undergrad years. And so it's kind of getting that attitude looked at, examined, because elsewhere in the country there are native earthworms, just not in Minnesota. And so it's kind of like, okay, are worms good or bad? Well, it depends. It depends what kind of earthworm, and it depends where you are, and it depends what they're doing.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a correction. Dendrodrilus rubidus is now considered to be native. And we did find it in most of our plots on the Chippewa National Forest. But it's not very abundant and it lives in special habitats like under logs and so on. So it's not very abundant compared to Dendrobana, which is the non-native one that has a similar niche, ecological niche. But yeah, Dendrodrilus rubidus is probably going to be declared as a native species soon. There have been a couple papers published, including one that I just peer reviewed that's going to be published in Ecology, showing that it's probably been present for a long, long time and that it has a special niche and a special relationship to ungulates in cold, temperate, and even southern boreal forests. So, and that's Dendrodrilus rubidus, which at one point was Dendrobaena rubidus, I think, or rubida or
Yes,
something
yeah.
like that.
Is
And,
it currently called Bimastos?
Yeah, oh, that's right. Now they
Yeah.
switched it to
Mm.
Bimastos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Bimastos rubidus. Yeah, that's right. They changed the name of it like 3 times since I've been doing earthworm research. And
Yeah,
I think they did use that other genus name for the publication. Yeah, because Dendrodrilus as a genus is not native here. But now that they think it's in the Bimastos genus, now it's considered native. Yeah.
If there's already published papers, would you mind putting links in the chat, or when this new one comes out, let us know?
Yeah, I don't have it readily available enough to put it in the chat right now, and I probably have to wait until the in-press one is published anyway before I start publicizing that. But I'll find those, and if somebody sends me a reminder email in the next few days, there's one paper's already published and one is probably in press by now.
Since I unmuted, I'm just going to ask my other question. I don't really understand the whole EPA won't consider an earthworm pesticide, because there's a lot of pesticides for beneficial things, right? There's pesticides to kill fish, and fish are beneficial, but there are still approved, pesticides that kill fish. Or there's a lot of native mammals, but there are still pesticides approved to kill rodents. So I don't quite understand.
That's a good point. I just know that in our world of lawn and ornamental herbicides, insecticides, I don't know of one product that lists worms as as the target pest. I just don't know.
You would be the first, right?
We would be that product would be the first. Although
someone put wasps in the chat. Yeah, sort of same idea. Someone had to be the first. Yeah.
But I think you make a really good point that there are pesticides that do, like rotenone, that kills every fish in the pond for the purpose of, there's some kind of end game there to repopulate to get rid of the pike and do something else and put the bass back in. But I did send Vera, I don't know if you were able to call your local EPA people. I mean, if you go on their website and try to figure out, okay, who can I talk to, and just point blank ask them, do you think this is worth it? Do you think we should go down this path? And that's something I don't know how to do and wouldn't know where to start at, because I don't have any inside track with the EPA.
So we've been talking to IR4, and Michael Braverman's been there for years, Braverman, and he hasn't said that to us. He knows we're interested in trying to get a product labeled for jumping worms, and he's never said anything about that's impossible. He's been very helpful.
I don't know what part of the product could be patented that would benefit, your royalties for research, if I'm understanding why universities get involved in this. But I suppose it would be in synthesizing the active ingredient. Or I don't know. Am I speaking? I'm not knowledgeable. I don't want to sound like I'm an idiot on.
Well, I don't
that.
know the answer. No, you're not an idiot. To get the university involved, they have contacted me like 6 times to talk about this, but they're not giving you any money. So they sent me to Procter and Gamble, and I put in a grant with Procter and Gamble. And it's still pending. It hasn't been kicked out. So I don't know the answer to, I don't know the answer to your question. If Procter and Gamble then would put money in to fund exactly what the active ingredient is, then probably if you did some preliminary work and showed there's some very water soluble, a polar compound that's water soluble from from Castaway, and you could be able to label it as saponin 3 or whatever, maybe not know the exact saponin, but then probably the university would say, okay, can you make that in a slightly unique way? Can you make it synthetically in a process? And once you have a process, then the process gets patented and you own that process. So this is like way out of my pay grade. We can start this and try to figure out how to get it registered. And if on that way to get it registered, we get people along the way interested to partner with the university on trying to figure out synthetically what it is, that's great. But right now we're just trying to take your product and trying to get that registered.
Yeah. And you're trying to help the public understand how to manage this horrible issue. And the closest I've seen from universities is a disclaimer that, yes, these products do this, but we must tell you nothing's registered. And I guess that's how you do that. And because certainly tea seed meal is a great and affordable option. So if you're looking at, if you can buy it on Amazon for $100 for 50 pounds, and that 50 pounds will treat 5,000 square feet. So a homeowner, and they can get 25-pound bags. So not a lot of people have a 5,000 square foot garden. Some do, but then when you're looking at nursery and forest understories, then you get some huge dollars. That's not affordable, almost not affordable.
Well, I think that's a good summary, Jim, of what's going on. I mean, a lot of people, when you buy a bag of fertilizer, it often says like 5,000 square feet. So it's not, you might not, you could use it repeatedly. Let's put it that way. You wouldn't have to use it all that same day. So I think it is workable. It's, the EPA sent us off to look at these labels. They have a label for nursery and for backyards, nursery pots and backyards of a similar saponin, but from a Chilean tree, Tahia, and the box tree. And they just can't, these labels are out maybe 2 or 3 years, and they have nematodes. So that's where EPA told us to start, because they supposedly, it's the same kind of chemical. It's just registered as a group of saponins, not any particular active ingredient. It has a label. And to them, if it has a label and it's the same mechanism, dissolves the mucus on a nematode, then register it. So that may be the very short-term way to get this done, and then work on getting the TC meal registered, because I think a lot of people would be happy. So the reason why the university contacted me is they said, well, it would be really good to sell a product where you put this pathogen I have for Japanese beetle, and you put it in the tea seed meal, and then people can control Japanese beetle and jumping worms by buying a bag of compost.
Yeah.
And the university finds that very appealing for people. So I have no idea where this Procter & Gamble is going, but that they've been contacting me and sending me down that road, and I just did what they told me to do.
Okay.
All right. So thanks so much, Jim. We really appreciate
You're welcome.
So Laura, do you have any updates on any regulatory information?
No updates. Nothing new.
Okay, so what's next on our list here? Jim, you're regulatory after Laura. Do you have something?
Jim Conley, me?
No, Jim Calkins, the MNLA
Oh, okay.
military guy.
All right.
The other Jim.
The other Jim.
Yeah. No, I don't, Vera. I did talk with a number of folks at Northern Green, including Midwest Ground Covers. And just to Jim's point, they are spending huge amounts of money on 6 acres. And so the cost of TC meal would be nothing compared to what they're doing.
Okay, so Kung Su, do you have something to share with us on research or anything, new papers or other new information?
Uh,
I know you got a MITPIT grant, right?
yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. Thank you. But that's a project with Lee and Angie and Erin. So that's just me. And so we don't have the results yet, but we have been installing the erosion pins and also sediment collectors at Minnesota Arboretum and also Lake Rebecca. So Erin has been helping us, and also Meg has been helping us too. And we also established native plant trials both at Minnesota Arboretum and Lake Rebecca. And so thank you again, Erin and Meg. So those are the kind of ongoing works. So we expected to have some kind of a data after this summer. So I look forward to kind of presenting some of the data that, like you did. So in 6 months. But
Yeah,
thank you
it's
for asking me.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but
Mm.
I am always amazed how long it takes to generate data. So it's kind of scary. All right, so I think we've gone through the different sections. Symposium, getting information from Lee, the Obi-Wan Kenobi on jumping worms. Hearing what his musings on jumping worms. Do you have any new musings, Lee, you want to impart to us?
No, except that when we had the drought in September and October, my personal wildflower garden with 30 species of native plants has a very slight slope, and all the jumping worms went to the lower end and they killed everything except the asters.
Yeah, so that's something that we're gonna, once we can get colony going, we want to take hostas because Jim Calkins has said that some of these greenhouses have troubles with hostas. And Erin, I think you said that at the Arboretum too. And we want to see if they eat the roots because we have a feeling that they're eating roots off things.
Yeah, I think that's the case too, yeah. And when we have a rainy summer, they stay distributed throughout the whole garden and they never gather in any one place, so they don't kill anything, but yeah, what I had was I think Short's aster, which gets pretty big, and that was the only thing that survived where the jumping worms gathered.
And Lee, you used the word gather, but I'm just curious whether earthworms who happen to be living in the moist soil, those are kind of the ones that survive, or actually the jumping worms from the dry part actually move to the wetter part. And
Yeah,
I feel like I kind of favor the second one, but
yeah, I think they moved
yeah, they
because
move. Yeah,
otherwise you couldn't get enough
yeah.
density of them quick enough
Yeah.
to kill the roots of all the plants.
Yeah. That's how I kind of feel, but I don't really have hard data to really prove this. But they seem really mobile.
Yeah, they're way more mobile than
yeah,
the European earthworms for
Yeah.
sure.
So what is Tyler Bauman doing? Is he continuing with jumping worms or is he gave it up?
No, I would not say he gave up, but then he has his own business now, selling sauces, and he creates and sells really nice sauces. So
Why, help me out. Why would somebody want to purchase a sausage?
yeah, and I can share the link too, but I probably have to search for him. But
Sausage,
yeah,
little insect sausage?
so sauces, so like a really nice, you put on your like a salsa sauces and
Oh, salsas. Oh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought you were saying
yeah.
PSOCID.
No,
You're
sorry, yeah,
soil eating,
yeah,
so these are little insects that live with
yeah,
jumping worms.
yeah,
So I
not,
thought people were buying them to
yeah.
make more sustainable soil. Oh,
I
okay.
wonder whether his salsa sauce may also kill jumping worms, though. I don't know.
Uses mustard, maybe. Yeah, so he's off doing something fun. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So is
you
there
may.
anybody else besides you doing research? I heard there's another group that got some money from MITPAC, and they were going to look at plants that kill jumping worms or something, a lab in horticulture or plant science. Did you see that? It was just
No, no.
part of a larger grant.
Oh, I see.
They were
Yeah.
using multiple invasive species they were looking at. I've never bumped into them.
No, yeah.
All right, well, I think we're good. And we'll try to give information. We'll get a hold of Joseph and we'll talk to him about how he wanted you guys to interact, and we'll talk about what we have in mind for education, not only giving us like something for Vita that you got something published, but having some outreach too. So anybody want to add anything?
I was going to say something, Vera. If you, I'm a small company, as you know. We have like 10 employees. But I am connected with a very large consortium of companies. And that group, we were looking at going down the path of EPA registration because we have 30 products that we have EPA numbers on as a group. And they're existing chemistries that we are large enough where we put out a bid to Syngenta or Bayer or to all the chemical formulators in the world, and they build products for us. So I'm not a rich guy, but I do have connections in the industry. And I found it interesting that you've reached out to Procter & Gamble. I suppose, and I didn't know this, that they have a horticulture or an agricultural pesticide division. That would be news to me. I was unaware of that.
Well,
But
the RFP said they wrote something down. They're interested in a garden product that was sustainable and non-toxic to kill garden pests. And
okay.
they make soaps. So you can imagine if I send them a proposal that says I want to look at soaps, and Project Garden is known for its soaps, that they have an interest.
And saponin is in shampoo.
Oh, it's in everything. Beer. It was in the vaccine for, the recent vaccines all have it in there. It's amazing when you put it online, all the different uses of saponin.
There's a US formulator. They might be one of the largest, called Albaugh, ALBAUGH. They have chemists and they're formulators. And then the other company is called Adama, ADAMA. And those two companies produce a lot of the pesticides that we build and sell under a private label. So if we sent the proposals to those two companies right there, that might be an avenue to get some funding for the research.
Oh, really? Okay.
So if you want to, I will email you I'll run interference and get a hold of the people in those organizations, give them a heads up, get you their contact, and you can maybe go down, get some funding. I guess it all depends on how you present it to these companies. I mean, they're going to be very familiar with doing this. In fact, we've registered a couple of new chemistries with these companies that have developed some new chemistry. Registration is pretty much in the hands of Syngenta, Bayer, and BASF. I mean, those are the kings of new chemistry registration. But this chemistry is a little different. As you said, it's already out there for a nematicide. So is it a new chemistry? It is. Is it something that you can ride the coattails of an existing chemistry?
Well, when you'd be riding the coattails of the existing chemistry.
Yeah, and that's a different world
That's
altogether.
easier. That's very easy. Well,
Yeah.
not very, but it's easier.
Yeah, but I'm happy to put you in touch with some power players in the chemical world, and I would just encourage you to keep your contacts with your EPA people and see how far you can get with free advice.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to add anything, Julie?
No, I think I'm good.
So your juvenile jumping worms are what you think could be contaminated jumping worms, but maybe they're jumping worms.
Mhm.
They're still alive? 18
Yeah.
weeks? All right. So this, so we're using Memes worm food. Those of you who want to try it, it's on the web. Yes.
I do have a question for all of you experts on the cocoon. Is that what we call them, the overwintering structure?
Yes. Yes.
How do those, tell me about the cocoon, how bulletproof it is, and how many each worm can lay in one season, and what soil temperatures they need, if you don't mind. What soil temperatures do they need when do they start hatching? And is there a known temperature that, I guess it would be mostly cold, the coldest temperature they can withstand?
Well, I don't know if we can help you with that. We can tell you that our lab is about at 70 degrees and they hatched very easily. When the adults died, the juveniles, the cocoons hatched. And Julie still sees some cocoons. But I don't, there might be, Julie, did you ever bump into a research paper on abiotic and biotic issues with cocoons?
I know that they start hatching in like mid-April. I know there's a paper that determined like growing degree days for hatching.
So we'll get you that, Jim. We'll send it to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. I don't think every homeowner can do a growing degree calendar, but
and Joseph Guerres' group has published a paper. So basically, jumping on cocoons, they can hatch even during the winter time if the soil temperature goes above like a 5 degrees C, and then once it gets to the 10 degrees C, then they can hatch and then survive. Yeah. So
and he also found I think it was around -20 Fahrenheit in Vermont when they had an episode without snow, or maybe it was -10 Fahrenheit, and they survived that just fine. And Brad Herrick did some research on how hot they can go, and I think it was around 105 degrees Fahrenheit, if I remember right.
104, they say. 104 is the kind of absolute killing point. But it looks like 100F has been sort of the management goal.
104 for 24 hours. was what
Mhm.
Brad said.
Yeah.
And then also for
Mhm.
Jim, there are
Mhm.
growing degree day calculators that are free for homeowners. Like Syngenta
Oh.
has one where you just pop in
Mm.
your zip code and it'll tell you what
Okay.
those 50 GDDs are. So
Yeah.
nobody has to
Okay.
calculate it. It's super easy.
Yeah, so and
Interesting.
we actually calculated growing degree days for jumping arms, and we basically found out that jumping arms have no problem in self-sustaining in entire Minnesota, and they can go further, and they can live in Alaska
Wow.
without much problem, at least in Anchorage area in Kenai. They
So
may
are there
not go
regular?
to, yeah, they may not go
Yeah.
to live in the Fairbanks, but they can live in Anchorage.
Are there regulations in your states regarding composting temperatures? Is there a certification? Is there a certified compost that's actually composted correctly at
What?
105 degrees for
Yeah,
48 hours?
yeah. So if that is kept, then theoretically, then it will kill jumping of others and cocoons.
Yeah,
Okay.
in fact, they require it to be heated much more than that because of other pests. But I think the problem is that a lot of those mulches get recontaminated because they put them in a pile outside and they get recontaminated. And I've even seen bagged mulch that had been properly temperature treated, recontaminated just because there was a tear in the bag and it was stored on the ground. And jumping worms went in, and this was a bag of mulch that came from a Menards store that somebody brought to my office. So
Okay. And one worm can lay like what, 1,000 cocoons?
not that
Oh,
many,
yeah.
one or two per week, I think.
I was gonna say, I do
Oh.
have, I think, another paper that tried to quantify how many cocoons they lay in a day, which I could also send out. Or like, yeah.
I think it's like 60 in the period of time that they're active in Minnesota.
I think that would be assuming that they mature early because they like Kyung-Soo said a lot of times they don't all hatch at once, like seeds germinate at once. They hatch throughout the growing season. So the earliest ones that hatched will, assuming they survive the entire growing season, produce the most cocoons. But again, with drought and other factors, it's possible that the most mature ones won't make it to the first frost.
Yeah.
Yep. And of course, I don't think we know much of anything about whether these same chemicals will kill cocoons, right? So.
Yeah, I don't know.
I will say, as somebody who has collected cocoons, they are pretty darn fragile, so you have to be very careful or you will pop them.
Yeah, they're physically fragile, but
Yeah. But chemically, no, it doesn't appear that they are.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I think this is great for all of us to talk and share this anecdotal information, because as we start doing our research, that's the only way we're gonna keep on track by people who have actually worked with these and have some experience of, even if it's not quantified in a peer-reviewed journal, it's really important for us to chat about this. So I find these sessions really helpful. I hope you do too. Send comments to us. Send us any agenda items if you want to be on it, the agenda in more detail, if you want to send some graphs or data or whatever. And otherwise, we will see you in 2 months. And thank you so much for being here today. And we will contact you about this online education experience we want to work on. We want to work on it with Erin, but we haven't called her yet. So we're a little slow.
I'm around.
Good. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Talk to you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.